Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
All right, so that was the first conference call by Infosys. So the management, the board, actually trying to put some sort of clarifications or some intentions on what the way ahead could be to investors, to the market. But I think for now, the market actually not taking heart from any of these assurances. The stock down 9%. I think it's seen its biggest intraday fall in a long time. And the big question now remains that what happens to the buyback? How will investors look at it? And even the stock itself, at what point will people actually start believing in Infosys? Will they get their confidence back?
Absolutely, Sumit. And who takes charge next, right? Yeah. Who would like to take charge next? That's going to be the real important point. Infosys, in terms of, the movement of the stock, well, clearly that, that conference call didn't help much because the stock has moved to the low point of the day. In terms of a total fall on the Nifty, we're down 75 points. 50 points is because of Infosys. When we started off the call, in fact, it was closer on 40 points contributing on the downside. And if you just take a look at the futures plate as well, more than a crore shares have been added on the short side. So all those factors clearly playing out, close to 45, 50 points on the downside. The futures plate as well should come up. Sumera, the big question is now, will Infosys derate from here? Will you give it a lower multiple than the 14, 15 times that you're giving? I was just taking a look at some numbers. Last year, did an EPS of around 63, 64 rupees. Now this year, if you're assuming close to around 70 rupees, it's still trading at around 14 times or thereabouts. What happens to the clients? Who takes charge next? Lot of unanswered questions, really. And that explains why, in fact, the stock has virtually moved to the low point of the day. In terms of the buyback, that's going to be quite important as well, particularly for the retail audience. What happens to the institutions? Well, that acceptance ratio is going to be very, very small. But for retail audience, that's going to be quite important as well. We'll try to get in a few reactions as well to tell you what to do with the stock from here. But as we speak, it's, it's clearly moved to the low point of the day and dragging its feet.
Nigel, for me, actually, one of the most important points in this entire conference call was when people asked about, who would come on board next as a CEO and what assurances could they be given. Shireen Ban is on the line with us as well. Shireen, you heard the conference call. What are your key takeaways?
Well, the point that you just mentioned, Sumaira, I think that is going to be absolutely critical and key. As the nominations committee starts to look for a successor for Vishal Sikka, the question is that this trust deficit that exists between the founders and the board of Infosys, is there going to be a mechanism, a way to be able to bridge that trust deficit? Because as we heard repeatedly through that conference call and as we've been reporting as well, the gap has only widened, the rift has only gotten worse over the last few months. So if there were to be an outsider specifically who comes in, then the quotient of adaptability, the need to traverse this very, very tricky terrain is going to be acknowledging that very clearly and very openly. Also, given the fact that this has been a very vicious battle that has played out over the last several months, it is going to require someone with tough nerves, with the stomach to be able to deal with some of this. But the question now is, and there were no adequate responses there from the Infosys board on what is going to be this permanent solution to try and address the issues with the founders. Ravi Venkatesan several times in the due course of the conference call said, we have to find a permanent solution. We have to find a way to be able to bridge the concerns that the founders have so that it doesn't impact the workings of the next guy in. It doesn't impact stability, future stability of the company. But what is going to be that permanent solution? There are no answers. Remember, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas was brought in to actually draw up a framework of governance. And what is important is, as we've just heard, one of the investors on the conference call also raising that issue, that look, you can't specifically address the concerns raised by only one set of shareholders, even if they happen to be founders of the company. You have to address investor concerns and questions of all investors. So that is going to be critical now for the Infosys board to try and address. But let's bring in a quick reaction from Mr. J.N. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, thanks very much for joining us. The Infosys board continuing to reiterate its support there as far as Vishal Sikka is concerned, but also stating very clearly that they will need to find a way to address the concerns that the founders have raised, find a permanent solution within the ambit of law. Now, how do you see that working out, Mr. Gupta? Because investors are raising questions that, look, you can't address the concerns raised by some minority shareholders and not by others.
I absolutely endorse the view of the investors. I find it a very difficult situation for the simple reason the founders, just because of the weight of their reputation, are trying to bulldoze their way. They have impeccable reputation. In the process, they are using that reputation to multiply their effect, and because with a minuscule shareholding, they are putting other 90% or 85% shareholders to the hostage of their whims and fancies. I have been maintaining that if they feel that they are the God sent people to run the company, why they left, they should come back and run the company. Please do not fire the gun from the shoulder of others or an unknown person. The second thing is very clearly that if you see the numbers, because we generally do not analyze the numbers, but whatever has been reported, the performance of Infosys has improved in the last 2-3 years. Now, what are you cribbing about? To me, it is very simply a case where a person who has taken retirement, he does not find any other work to do, so he keeps on nagging you here and there. Then I have said very clearly that it is some sort of a blue whale game that Mr. Murthy has played with Sikka.